If you'd like to join the ranks of Patreons and sponsor the show, head over to patreon.com/Cellar Door Skeptics. For less than a 20-ounce soda or an energy drink each week, you can help sponsor us, the hosts, and our charity of choice. Patreon helps Cellar Door Skeptics create better content, become better activists, and it's going to help you stay healthier by drinking one less soda or one less energy drink each week. Click the link in the notes of the show to sponsor us today because we bring the discussion with the sources.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Walk with me through the cellar door.
A storm is coming, Francis.
A portal to a more skeptical world.
Cellar Door Skeptics begins right now. Prepare for the revolution with your hosts, Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna.
Welcome to Cellar Door Skeptics. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight on this epic adventure we call a podcast. Epic.
It is. It's always epic.
The funny thing is, it's 11:30 at night. We both have to get up at 6 a.m. We've been we've been discussing Hannah's favorite genre of music for the last hour about why he's incorrect that Nickelback is not a category of music. We've been discussing this, and I should have been recording it, but I realized halfway through the discussion we weren't recording, and I was like, nobody probably wants to hear this anyway. But we've been talking for over an hour now. Before you even get to hear us, we've had a couple of drinks. Hannah's hair is standing straight up because he's pulling his hair out as I'm explaining to him why Nickelback is not a genre of music and we should stop categorizing things by that shitty band. Oops, I swore already.
Yeah, we're already going to have that. Now, we're going to do. We've been experimenting with our audio system and our technical music playing abilities when it comes to two people being at separate locations on the globe here. We're going to hopefully have it set up one of these days where we'll be able to play music and we can kind of like Mystery Science Theater 3000 go over and critique live with stuff that's not so loud that it blows the hearing aids right out of my head, and we can do like a music episode or something like that. So if is there anybody out there who wants to hear like mumble rap critiques and maybe Nickelback and my perception of why Nickelback is basically the Ron Perlman of rock and roll, or if even people even say rock and roll anymore.
Who's Ron Perlman?
The guy who created NSYNC, Backstreet Boys, 98 Degrees, all the girl bands. Like, he's a cookie cutter musician guy who went to jail, I believe, over embezzlement. Either way, I have a problem with corporate rock, and Nickelback fits it in it. So that was one of my comments. But if we do like a music show or something, like anybody wants anything to go over us and maybe give us some pointers, send us down some rabbit holes, and we could do some kind of like super music stuff. Because we did some music reviews right when we first started off the show with reviews of Fear Factory, and you did Slayer, didn't you?
Yeah,
I think you reviewed Slayer.
And
so I don't know, music. Yeah, I mean, music's fun. We do some reviews or something, and we can talk about some stuff on that one. But we got to get some kinks figured out in the system here. But
it's actually just on his side. On my side, I'm having it just fine.
Yeah, you can hear it just fine. No, literally everything that he's playing over the system comes into my ear at Spinal Tap level. So I directly connect my hearing aids to the laptop, and so it's like having a pair of $2,800 headphones, or the kind of headsets that musicians wear that mold into their ears, and then turning it up to 11. It's the loudest like a hearing aid can blow.
At least you can't lose any more hearing, man.
Oh yes, I can. I could lose the 10 to 15% I have left, and
really?
It could be because of what you're doing to me. That may be it. Personally, I really honestly think that when they say like through the natural degradation of the senses at 40, 50, 60, you start to notice that your hearing loss is. So like my body is going to break down just because that's what happens to organic matter. And so my assumption is that I will probably at 60, 70 years old be completely deaf. That's one of the reasons why I try to stay up on like nerve regeneration techniques, any kind of new science they have. Like it could, the thing that could fix somebody who has paralysis in their spine, stem cells and all that, that could be what turns my audio nerve back on. So like that, because it may be completely degenerated by the time I'm, Medicare age, if we never get a full on single payer social healthcare system in the U.S. So I could be completely deaf. So when we finish episode 3,462, maybe I'll be completely deaf and you'll no longer be able to talk to me on Skype 4.0 or whatever the heck it'll be at that point.
Hopefully by then they'll be able to have it'll take my audio and sync it up and it'll display everything I say at real time. So.
Just play it right into your head, like in Ghost in a Show, where we have e-brains that can connect directly to the net.
Yeah, exactly. And at that point, we might as well not be human anymore, and we just might be ghosts in a machine. Don't know. Never know.
Sounds good. We get some transhumanists on the shows and tell us why we're wrong.
Oh, let's not go there. So tonight we have a couple of things. Really, this show is going to be a pretty basic show. We have an interview a little bit later tonight with a gentleman named Jonathan, who's a PhD candidate in physics, and the name of his platform is called Intelligent Speculation. And him and I have a really good conversation about the laws of critical thinking, what his platform's trying to do, and where we can go from there. His name is Jonathan Maloney. He's a soon-to-be Dr. Jonathan Maloney, not quite there yet. But we had a really good conversation. We've hit the religious spectrum a little bit harder lately with the last two episodes. And this one does touch on religious beliefs a little bit, but not as much as it actually talks about critical thinking and the discussion around how do we use critical thinking skills in this day and age, right? Because what happened over the weekend between last episode and this episode, that's I'm chomping at the bit to have the conversation about, because I can't wrap my head around how we're even where we are today. How about this, Hannah? I wake up every morning and then I open my Facebook up and I almost close it because within the first 10 or 15 scrolls, I have to see something about Trump. Now, normally it's not a Republican, I love him, let's decorate him, build him a monument, make him, dictator of all time. But I still have to hear about him. And I keep going back. Have you ever watched the show called Drawn Together?
Yeah, that was a pretty good show back when I used to watch live television.
Yes, and it was on Comedy Central. If you've never seen Drawn Together, go all the way back. Yes, some of it's crude, but go all the way back.
It's crude.
They have a announcer box that runs the whole reality TV show of cartoon characters.
Yeah.
Who's Trump? And then the other weird thing is my son's recently been watching The Simpsons, right? And we watched the episode where President Trump comes on. Because if we're going to watch the old ones, I was like, I got to see this one. Even though it's only 10 or 15 seconds, I have to see it. And it's just weird to put the word president and Trump together. And it's weird to actually see him on a national platform. And it's weird. It's just weird to me to the point where I still feel almost like I'm in a dream. I almost feel like I'm like this inception that's trying to get out. I just need to get out of this because I cannot even imagine how a rational society has gotten to the point where we elected Donald fucking Trump as president. It befuddles me to the point of non-existence how anybody can support this shit stain. I don't get it.
I've been reducing my intake on social media of late on political stuff. I haven't really been sharing a lot of political stuff on my personal page, and I've been kind of limiting a little bit of the intake. And in particular, the reason being is to try to kind of decompress a little bit and try to find the stuff that is a little bit more consequential. So try to find the things that are really important, and then kind of leave a little bit of this, he's just who he is and what he does and how he does things. That is annoying and it's frustrating, but and a lot of times it's really inconsequential. It's just kind of ugly and vulgar and crude. But I try to find the stuff that is really important. So I've been using less resources that are, kind of like more social clickbaity, and been sticking to places that I really trust. And I've been finding that it's a little bit easier. And I've also been looking more towards Europe to see what's been going on there, because there's been some serious uprisings. And there was a couple of protests or rallies in Italy recently that are like MAGA hat rallies. There's some really big things that are going on as far as the rise of the, I like to say post-nationalist, because we had the nationalism set up, and these guys are really trying to bring back that the original nation state stuff. It's cutting up regions and trying to cut down the European Union. A lot of this stuff.
Look at Israel, man.
But it's growing everywhere. Yeah, and so I've been trying to minimize it a little bit and taking the whole world into context. The treaty that just ended that stopped medium range ballistic missiles, which is going to be endangering Europe and a lot of really things. I've been trying to learn about the whole world state, because as much as it's insane what we're doing here, a lot of the stuff that we do is just like nitpicking, kind of a jerky butthead guy that nobody really likes, but that, whatever. But the stuff that our Secretary of Defense just did is basically say that we're no longer that treaty, the medium range treaty, is blown up because the Russians are just doing whatever they want. Like, this is freaky stuff. And so I try to take it all in to try to make it, try to minimize some of the stuff that I hate. That's like frivolous, but it's nasty. And I've been finding that it makes life a little bit easier.
And it could be. For me, I don't know. I don't know what it is. It is what it is, I guess.
Yeah.
So the beginning of the show, I wanted to talk a little bit about Trump's national emergency.
Yeah, and it's his. It is his.
It's his. I'm sorry.
It's entirely his.
Yep, it's his whole thing. So to begin with, there is a link in the description that is from The Atlantic that is a transcript of everything that he said. And I'll be perfectly honest with you.
The Rose Garden speech?
Not only did I not listen to this until today, right? I did not actually listen to the speech until today, because I actually have boycotted almost everything that he said that he airs live. I just don't watch it anymore. And even
I don't watch it live
postpartum,
either.
I don't bother to watch it. I usually just watch commentaries on it, and then when I want to clarify something, I go back and watch the whole thing, to have a conversation about it. But within the first, 10 minutes, he literally said, I was down in El Paso, Texas, in a rally, right? And he's like, you guys know El Paso, Texas, right? And he was like, I'm down in El Paso, Texas, and the border wall, we put a wall up down there. And some of you were, all of you were there, but no, some of you were there. He literally corrected himself while he was speaking. I've never heard that.
He wasn't reading off of a teleprompter, and you can tell. So when he does stuff, like when he did the State of the Union speech, that was teleprompter. That was him reading off of a card. There was very little back steps. There was very little stream of thought consciousness stuff. That he wasn't searching for words. He had it right in front of his face. And at the Rose Garden speech, there were some points that were there, but it really was on him. It was him giving a speech. And so when he does that, his speech mannerisms are eclectic and awkward and uneven. And one of the things that bugs me the most is when he's reading something, he doesn't understand the cadence of a sentence. And so he's reading something because he'll get 2/3 of the way through the sentence and finish the breath, and then he still has more sentence, and he didn't expect it to be there. And so he'll say something like, then we have to go make sure we're safe. He has this weird pause, and then he talks real quiet and draws out the last word. And it's a mannerism that you can hear and everything. And when he speaks, when he doesn't have that, it's not like that at all. It's rally speak, and he speaks hard and fast, and he bounces all over the place, and it's incredibly complex and hard to follow because he doesn't have it written in front of him. He speaks and thinks in fragments, is my estimate. And that's what this entire thing was in the Rose Garden. It was
exactly
pieces.
You're right. And going back to what I had, the thing he said, this is what he said. He says, I was in El Paso. We had a tremendous crowd from all over Texas. Well, from El Paso. Like, and you're like, wait a minute, like, are you from all over? But it's the pause. Like, if you read it straight out, it makes a little bit more sense. But that weird little pause. He also said this. He says, let me ask you as a crowd, when the wall went up, was it better? You were there. And he pauses. He pauses right in the middle of it. And then he goes, well, some of you. And you're like, what? Wait. Like, and if you read that in a sentence, right? You were there, some of you.
Because the person puts a comma in that, and it makes sense.
You were there, some of you. But when he pauses, it's like, you were there, some of you. And you're like, either we were or we weren't. Either they were or they weren't. Either, what are you talking about, dude? Like, he's just absolutely, like, I don't know. The mannerisms on the ideology is absolutely crazy. But the first link that we have is actually for the actual speech transcript. So if you don't want to listen to him, which I would recommend 100% not to listen to him, you can actually look at, you can read through his speech and feel a little bit better about not wasting, your complete time.
Yeah, I mean, I don't recommend really, like, long-term 90-minute speech for the State of the Union was painful because it was that long. It wasn't him off the cuff. Like, long speeches that he does at the rallies hurts. Like, when he did Paso speech, he was basically doing a side-by-side with Beto O'Rourke. He had a speech going on at the same time, so they had competing ones, and they said there was a lot of strife, and it was I think at Trump's El Paso is when one of the BBC cameramen was assaulted. So, I mean, there's a whole bunch of things that are happening here when it comes to the culture and what's going on. It's freaky. But, like, what he's talking about at the Rose Garden is the national emergency that he's invented. That's one of the reasons why I said this is his national emergency. Because even some Republicans are like, listen, we need to make sure this is done right. And that he's just basically, he has been recorded saying that they won't do what I need them to do. They won't do it. So I'm going to do this. And he said that this is an emergency. This is what I need to do to get what I want. It's been recorded multiple times, and him basically saying that there isn't an actual emergency. This is just a precedent that I'm setting. This is a tool that I'm using. This is something my lawyers told me I could do to get my money, to take money from other places and use it the way I want to use it. And this is setting a precedent, and it's scaring some people, because if the shoe was on the other foot, if a Democrat president was doing this to, like Nancy Pelosi said, to say there's an emergency with gun control. There's 30,000 people that die every year from handguns related, I think is what it was, or shootings. Either way, there's thousands of people that die every year, and the number of I guess are they multiple shootings, or are they what do they call the shooting sprees? When it's like
mass shootings.
Yeah, the mass shootings. Those are like, when those are happening, there's more and more of those every year. And so Nancy Pelosi said if the president said that there was going to be a national emergency over that, Trump, by doing this, could set a precedent that the next president, being Democrat, could say that I need to redistribute money around from the Justice Department, from the executive branch, to cover the gun control emergency, national emergency. Like, there's all kinds of things that are happening here that, due to his unnatural and unorthodox style, just selecting things randomly and saying that this justifies my position, this could be changing how presidents work in the near future. And so, like, this is his invention, and it could change the way the executive branch works in the future. It's kind of scary, because I mean, we used to require evidence of, we need full-on evidence of why this is actually an emergency. And that's what the Democrats and the progressives like us have been asking for. And the numbers are there. I noticed that you've got the link in here.
Yeah. And that was the other thing, is let's look at the numbers, right? Let's look at all these other things. We could spend a lot of time debunking, it. And we have a CNN article where they debunk some of this. As well, and everybody's gonna go, well, it's CNN, it's all fake news, but that's just the Trump, bias there. They actually have links to every one of the descriptions, in it. And the irony is, I found the Cato Institute research, study before I found CNN's article. So when I was doing my research, I found it, and oh, by the way, they linked to it inside of there. Yeah,
that's pretty much what it is. It's like the immigration incarceration number and the number of immigrant crimes. They find that immigrants are, I think it was 25% less likely, or U.S. natural citizens are 4 times more likely to commit a crime, which makes sense to me because if you're illegally in a country, you are going to do everything you can to stay out of the law's way. It's one of the things that you always hear about is that someone's like, I didn't know he wasn't a citizen, but it's kind of suspicious now in hindsight how he would never go 1 mile an hour over the speed limit while driving. Like there's things that I've heard people say where it's just like, wow. And, that wouldn't surprise me if a rational, cognizant, cognitive, capable person was in a country illegally. I would do every single thing I could to be as innocuous and plain as possible to never draw any attention. So like the idea of immigrants coming over and just being criminals right out of the gate, like that happens. There's drug people, people in gangs that come across the border, but I would bet you that the number of people coming across the border is significantly higher trying to better their lives. And the way you do that is to come in and just be a good citizen as opposed to just running around doing whatever you want. So like the numbers agree with the people on the other side of this argument saying that there is no emergency that needs to be slammed shut with all kinds of special money and treatment.
Exactly. And, if you read through his speech, he criticizes people for not going against him about the port of entry discussions and this and that. And it's kind of funny because the Democrats made some concessions to some extent on what they want, what needs to be done by giving him a small amount of money. And he takes that as a win. It's essentially like, it's weird because it's like, it'd be like
he took less money for a win.
Yeah. It'd be like if I walked into my boss's office and I was like, I want a $50,000 raise. And he looks at me and he goes, yeah, okay, I'll see you in a
30?
year or two. And I come back and I'm like, seriously, I've got like 20 other people that think I should get a raise. I need that $50,000. And he's like, you could do one of two things. You can walk out and go find another job. You could protest me if that's what you want to do. But I'm not going to give you a $50,000 raise. So then I throw a fit. I get a bunch of people behind me, and I show my value, and then I just sit in the office and I go, okay, hey, you going to give me a raise? And then I get everybody else to sit around and not do anything for 2 weeks. And this whole time the company goes, well, if you're not actually working, you're not getting paid. And all these people below me are not getting paid, but I'm sitting there, I'm a salary, so I'm going to get paid no matter what, And I'm sitting there getting paid, and none of these other people are getting paid. And then all of a sudden, I go, okay, fine, this isn't working. Let's let them go back to work and you and I work this out. And I walk back in there, I was like, all right, I want my $50,000 raise. And they're like, Chris, I'm going to tell you, we offered you a $10,000 raise before you came to us. Guess what? Now I'm going to give you a $2,000 raise. And I'm like, yeah. All right, thank you, and I'll sign the deal. That's
and tell everyone you won.
Yeah, and I walk out on the floor and say, I won. It's the only way to save face. And, I understand the psychology side of that, right? I get it. I get why he has to do that. I get the understanding of wanting to make it look like you win, wanting to not be a loser, wanting to, show that you're the person that accomplished something for everybody. But we're not going to feel it. And the only way to get the wall, which he then turned around and said, well, it's like then all of a sudden me walking back out and saying, all right, every employee, I got what I wanted. I won, but here's the deal. You're only going to work this amount of hours and do this amount of things exactly the way I say them, and everything that's different, we're going to screw the company over until they pay us for it. And that's what he's doing. He's literally just saying, I'm going to circumvent the system to the point where I get what I want, even if it means stealing money from the country.
It'd be like taking some of the pay from people in other departments to get what you wanted. He'd be basically like, I'm in charge of these other departments. I'm going to take them and I'm going to allocate them into a way that I could call them my own. And I understand what it is. I've heard some people say that in the end, no matter what happens here, if Trump builds 2 miles or 200 miles, he's going to say that he built a wall and that he did what he said he would do. And so I really think if it comes down to it, that this is really a re-election measure. He doesn't really care if the wall actually gets built. The people coming across the border don't affect Donald Trump. They don't affect anything about his life. if anything, they probably help some of his companies because he hires undocumented illegals to clean his hotels in some places. But like in the end, it really does not affect him at all. This is not an important thing of his life. This is him trying to get a political win so that he can get elected, because lately the tax plan has been showing up in middle class where people actually owe money at the end of the year, and it's freaking people out. And if that continues to be the case, he's going to lose a big chunk of middle America. And so he needs to have something to re-energize his base, and building a wall is that thing. Because if the tax plan melts down as bad as people think it's going to, he's going to have a really, really difficult year. And so if he says, I built a wall, and everybody's like, well, what about our taxes? That's the part of the plan. It's the Democrats' fault. I built wall. Like if he says that enough, eventually people will be like, okay, you built wall, good job. And so I think that's really what this is him trying to score that political win, saying I said I would do this and I did it. And the specifics don't matter. Like I said, 2 miles or 200 miles. In the end, the people on Reddit who share, like the Anon 3717 guy, the guy that drives me insane, that guy is going to be like, he did it. He built the wall. He's the greatest thing. He calls him Geodis, the God Emperor of the United States. I can't even fathom why, how, and what, and where that works. But anyways, like those guys are going to support him. And so the question is he doing this to help his, to keep them, or is he trying to just to save, to try to battle off some of this stuff that's going to be happening in 2019 if the tax plan goes bad? I really don't think he cares that much about it, besides saying that he won. And so I think that's what's going to happen here in all of this legislation and legal meanderings that are going to happen now with suing him is going to be a big deal.
Exactly. And, the funny thing is he closed the speech out. He closed the speech out by saying, and one more thing, just to finish, we have removed thousands of MS-13 gang monsters. Thousands. They are out of this country. We have taken them out by the thousands, and they are monsters. Okay, do you have any questions? Like, he just switches. So if you Google MS-13, right? Literally, you want to know
you'll be on a government list.
They are less than 1% of total gang members in the United States, which they estimate gang members at 1.4 million. So less than 1%, they're estimating roughly around 10 to 12,000 gang members. Yeah. And what did he say? That they have removed thousands, right? So not only is this small gang really not that big of a threat, you're now, no offense, there even 12,000, gang members. Let's look at Steelcase. How much furniture can they move, and how many employees do they have? How many drugs are really coming in, and how many illegal people are really coming in with a 12,000 member? It's just not logical.
It's a big deal, but the drug cartels, the guys like El Chapo were in charge of, those cartels are way more influential and useful to the drug gang lords than any of this MS-13. It's just that is a name and a thing that people know. MS-13 has an insanely good branding setup. I don't understand it. I see MS-13 tags around my house in my neighborhood, like in Kentwood. There's a Latino population here. I don't know if it's teenagers just scribbling that stuff on the wall because they think it's cool, or if it's actual gang members. But like I even see it just kind of scattered around here and there. It's just they have a really good branding plan, I guess, and it hooked Trump pretty good because it's the only one he ever talks about, because of course it's Latin American one. You don't hear him talking about Bloods and Crips at all in LA.
No, exactly, and that's the thing here, right?
And they're way bigger.
Yeah, there's a huge difference here in what is happening, and I don't know. It's sad that he wants to use this as a catch-all, but that's what he's doing. And if you look at the statistics, and again, you can click in any of the links of the CNN articles. The one I focused on was how many immigrants murder, right? And I'll be honest, we could spend the next half hour dissecting this study. We could. We have more important things to talk about tonight, honestly. But we could spend time dissecting that and going through the study and how, in the long run, the amount of illegal immigrants committing crime is less than native immigrants, us, right, that are committing crimes. Citizens. Yep. And, we can look at all of those different things. And they talk about there's only one city that actually, or one state, I'm sorry, that actually even captures to the minute detail all the immigration crimes. And if you actually take all the percentages and look at them, they commit less crimes than per capita than, the rest of the people that are living here. And when you look at that and you understand the logic behind that, why would we believe anybody that says illegals are trying to kill us? Because the statistics don't show it. They don't even talk about, how much of an effect they are. And these one or two nationalized murders are kind of like, if we only had one or two, mass shootings in like 10 years, we probably shouldn't talk about mass shootings because it's not a thing. But when you have 7 to 10 of them minimum every year that make national news, we should probably talk about that, right?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things about the Latin American immigrant thing that I do see is something that people kind of run home is that when someone is killed, so like if you got a family member, let's say your husband and your wife gets killed. I think there was a gentleman whose wife was killed by an illegal immigrant, gang, drug runner, whatever this guy was. He was a repeat offender, dangerous dude. And this guy has turned it into, a national movement, a national charge, driving home the dangers of illegal immigrants. We have this fallacy that we like to talk about on the show, the fallacy of personal experience. There are people that the same thing happens to someone that's involved in, you're a parent and your child is killed in gun violence, and you'll go, it'll change your life and your world, and you will go to the end of the earth to ban guns from every house, every place, everywhere. And those kinds of things, what we hear, those are the things that filter through and work their way into the national media. And so in the end, by the time we get to it, you have these, emotional stories, really intense, driving emotional stories, and they very clearly attach themselves to the political spectrum. So the guy whose wife was killed, that is the thing where people are like, this is the thing. This is the stuff. Nobody in the mainstream media says this. They don't report this. Nobody hears about this, but this is what we're talking about, the dangers of immigrants. And then on the other end, you hear things, like there's a mass shooting, and it's a one of the statistically much more numerous white Christian nationalist mass shooter in the United States, and the progressive side will say, this is the danger of guns and mental health reform needs and that kind of thing, and they'll attach to that incredibly heavily. And the right wing media will be like, just a psychopath, mental health care, blah blah blah. We all go into our canned things on this, and so like all of these things that people are using as reasons why this emergency is an emergency on the left and the right, they're basically the same places that we always go. They're always the same places. And Trump is he is for as much as he is a problem, he's very good at manipulating that news cycle. He always has been. And so what he's done, he's made a couple of mistakes, not keeping his mouth shut. We have a lawandcrime.com thing here where he talks about, he said out loud that this is not an emergency. This is something that he needs to do in order to get what he wants. He wants to build a wall. He can't get the money from Congress, so he's going to do this as a national emergency thing so that he can get it. And in multiple cases throughout most recent news media cycles, he's been caught saying things that he directly said that he was going to do this, and this isn't entirely because it's a national emergency. It's that it's something that he needs to do so that he can get what he wants. And this is a very important thing to know, because when it talks about law and crime and when people are doing something, the lawyers are going to go over what you said, because recently in the court cases throughout a lot of Trump's his immigration bans and stuff, they said, well, what he tweeted and what he said is important and relevant to what he's doing. And so they use what he had done and what he had said in the past as part of the directive and the reason why he was doing what he's doing. In all of these interviews where he has been caught saying, this isn't really an emergency, this is more of something I need to do so I can get what I want. By the fact that he said that in public, on record, means that when it comes to court, they're going to be able to use that as admissible evidence. And that means that it's possible he's going to lose some of these cases, and he'll go through the appeals court, and potentially the big thing that he'll come back to is whether or not it makes it to the Supreme Court, where he's got 2 nominations on there, and he's changed the nature of that court. And so that could be his main hope is that if this does get appealed and blocked multiple times, that eventually it makes it to the Supreme Court while he is still president, and they make a decision on it. And like that is the big thing for suing him and making all of these court cases. Because I know Preet Bharara, who's now a podcasting guy, he's basically saying that this is directly suable and winnable. The guy in California, I believe the AG, he said they've already started a lawsuit. And so they're basically saying that that Trump is attacking them directly and personally, which is how you become a plaintiff in a case. So all of that stuff is, there's a lot of legal evidence out there, and they're saying that it's really already in the people that are suing Trump on this case, that it's in their favor. So we'll see if it comes through, that this can actually be blocked, or if the Supreme Court with 2 of Trump's nominations and confirmations will make the difference in the end.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny because Nancy Pelosi.
Sorry. Pelosi. She's not Polish.
I know, sorry. But she had a whole blog on it, essentially talking about how it doesn't exist at the border. Do you understand who's violating? And there's actually quite a few people that or states, that are actually going after and suing Trump. There at this current time, there's 13 states doing it, and Michigan will be the 14th state to join on Tuesday.
Dana Nessel.
Oh yeah. By the time we air,
got my vote.
They'll be joining. And like you said, there's a 538 article that I posted that actually talks about this in a little bit more detail. And I'll be honest, this is not our forte to understand the laws and how we could predict whether they're going to do, which way they're going to go. But it's kind of funny because technically the Senate could try and overrule this.
They could. What just happened in Michigan? Yeah. Our governor, Gretchen Whitmer, just put forth an executive ruling or an executive order, and she was overruled by the state legislature. As long as you hit a 60 out of 100, I believe it is, you're able to block an executive order, and they did it. It's the first time it's happened in a long time, and it just goes to show you what kind of power struggle is happening in Michigan right now. They say that there's enough votes in Congress right now, but I don't know if I believe that.
Yeah, I don't believe it personally. I don't. Basically, the article says 20 Republicans would have to break with the president, and that's kind of death to some of them, But again, if think about like Paul Ryan, at the time he could easily have broken because he wasn't running again. He was not going to run again, at all. And I guess 2024. You're right. Okay, fine, fair. But anyway, he at least is not running for a seat again. And I don't know. I'll take some of the optimism. I'll take some of the optimism where I can get it. How about that?
Yeah,
I feel better courts, if we could do that.
With the courts, I think it's possible because it's the Ninth Circuit. That's the one that Trump had all the difficulties with the immigration,
which he makes fun of again, by the way.
Yeah. What's that?
He makes fun of them again. He basically his speech basically said, "They're going to block me. I'll sue. They'll block me again. Blah blah blah."
Yeah, he thinks that being a president is like being a corporate CEO, where you just sue everyone and you try to use your weight and your money to just browbeat them and bash them in. That's not quite how it works with the separation of church and state, which is one of the reasons, or the separation of powers, which is one of the reasons why he's had so many troubles. But the other thing is that pretty much when he's going to be doing all of this stuff is one of the reasons why Mitch McConnell has been so dangerous and so effective is all of the judges that they've been, ramming through. They did 40 judges in one day a couple of months ago or last month or something like that. Like what Mitch McConnell has been doing with the judicial branch and just essentially politicizing it is going to be very, very important for any of the major decisions that are going to be happening. Any of these kinds of things coming through with President Trump doing what he's doing is because any of these people who are in the appeals court positions could potentially be that key, that cog, that could be the yay or nay on a Trump executive order or just legislation in general. And so McConnell is just on, he's the pedal to the floor. He's been incredibly effective in basically doing what Newt Gingrich did to the House of Representatives, is just essentially melting the thing down into this ridiculous ball of garbage. And so now McConnell is trying to do that to the Senate, and he is actively doing it to the judiciary. So like, it's scary to see, because those guys could be the people that stand in Trump's way. And so trying to, block some of those, but I don't hear the Democrats yelling and screaming and doing everything they can to block some of these judicial appointments. I don't know if they just simply can't do anything, and that's the reason, but like, judges matter. And this could be an example of why. Like, Trump could do this crazy national emergency thing, and he may have enough judges that he's been presiding over that they'll be like, well, he got me in, and I got a lifetime position, and I'll never have to worry about money, security, healthcare, or anything for the rest of my life ever again. I'm going to let him do what he wants to do. Like, I don't know if that's the case, but that could be what happens.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny. The article essentially talks about, how do we get, how do you replace the judges? What's happening? And that's a Republican agenda, right? But
and a very effective one.
And as we wrap the segment up, that's exactly what the Republicans wanted. How do we replace all these federal court judges with conservative judges that will pass our agenda? Trump just kind of pulled the wild card out and said, "Hey y'all, I'm here. I want my wall. You don't agree? Good. You put people in place, who's going to side with me?" That's what it feels like. This like crazy guy with a cowboy hat and guns shooting in the air saying, "I want my wall. You want your judges. Let's pick sides." I don't know.
But then he takes the hat off and he goes to New York, and he's back to being a metropolitan elite. Like, he's not a Southerner. I don't understand why. Like, you remember the old commercials with like El Paso, like where they had the salsa and they would be like, "You drink a Pace or El Paso," and they would like kill the guy or whatever. Like, that's the thing. Like, Trump would be so completely ridiculous compared to most Southerners.
Exactly. That's very true. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to have our interview with John Maloney. We'll be right back with more Cellar Door Skeptics. Considering how you want to help Cellar Door Skeptics, head over to iTunes or your favorite podcast app and give us a rating, because every rating helps push us in front of new listeners. And since our main goal here at Cellar Door Skeptics is to provide the most accurate information possible, we hope that more ratings will mean that more people get to hear the topics that we're presenting. We don't insist that we get a 5-star rating, but Hannah's favorite number is 5, and the more gold stars he gets, the more special he's gonna feel. So what do you say? Head on over to iTunes or Google Play, give us a rating, and help engage with Cellar Door Skeptics today.
Now, back to the show.
Welcome back to Cellar Door Skeptics Podcast. Thank you all for sticking around. This part of the show, we're doing another interview. And yes, I committed to doing more interviews. So we did all these political interviews before the election. Now we're kind of diving into some more deeper science, some personal stories, different things that accent the topics that we're working on. So some of the topics that I've slated for the show was the anti-vax thing. The debate I had to have online with other anti-vaxxers and people who don't care to understand the science behind it. Another one is climate change. We're working through a climate change episode that will be coming up here very shortly. So I thought, what better than to talk with a professional, a PhD candidate, somebody that has himself come from not understanding GMOs or vaccines to actually understanding the science, and now is looking forward to putting forth a platform that helps teach others about it. So please welcome to the show, Jonathan Maloney. How are you tonight, sir?
I'm doing well, Christopher. Yourself?
Good, yeah. And I didn't butcher your name, probably because I had to ask you.
It's all right.
The gimmick of the show, I'm very I'm not like Trump. I'm not good with words. So Jonathan had reached out and said, "Hey, I have this amazing platform. I'm looking to help educate, help bring forth a conversation to the public from a little bit different aspect." So, Jonathan, tell everybody about your website and a little bit about what it does.
Okay, so the website is www.intellegentspeculation.com. So the overall name of the brand is Intelligent Speculation, and the whole goal or mission is to reach out and try to foster a more critical thinking skills in the average person. And the whole reason why I got into this is I myself have a little bit of a pseudoscientific history where I doubted the safety behind both vaccines and GMOs. And then I had this long discovery period where I was digging through the science and I was entering into debates, and I was consistently coming up short when it came to evidence. I could not find the studies to support my position, or I was I was cherry picking, and I was looking at like fringe studies that shouldn't be taken very seriously or were later retracted. Anyway, part of this discovery process is I stumbled upon a subset of philosophy known as logic, and kind of that's where my whole journey began. And what's funny is I'm a PhD candidate and I'm a scientist. Why was it that I was even questioning the science to begin with? And a lot of that has to do with my upbringing. My mom did work in what's known as holistic dentistry, which ostensibly or on the surface sounds good, because we were promoting, okay, if you have a cavity, instead of just drilling and filling it, let's go ahead and dig a little bit more into the nutrition, the biomechanics of the bite, and see if there is an underlying cause to why you're actually getting cavities in the first place. Fix that, and then obviously address the cavity. Which, I mean, that sounds like that's a preventative measure that sounds sensible. But then there's a bunch of pseudoscientific nonsense that was also injected into it, like these energy machines, and the nutrition that we talked about was just garbage. Looking back at it, and yeah, so that's where that came from, was working and floating around those circles. There was a lot of talks about not vaccinating because vaccines are bad. They cause autism or they cause irreversible damage, which, again, okay, with vaccines, it's a medical intervention, right? With any medical intervention, you're going to have a small chance of side effects. Okay, you can't get around that. You can't get around that. However, listening to the experts in the field and the decades of the science, the value that vaccines add to society is tremendously outweighs the downfalls. And we're in such a privileged position that we don't have to deal with numerous infectious diseases anymore, like smallpox, like polio, that people often forget our roots, where we came from.
And
anyway,
what's funny too? So I'm gonna interrupt here for just a second, because it's kind of funny, because I came from an ultra conservative religious background, but my parents didn't understand the science behind the flood or canopy theory. Like I guess I don't know how religious you were, but I was taught canopy theory was this thing where that's how the flood happened. And he said essentially it's like a water biodome that God decided to release and flood the earth with, right? Which if you actually sat down and looked at the science behind it, it doesn't make any sense, because you would basically nuke the world. It would be like 300 degrees if you had water around the earth, even if that could happen and had it around the earth. But anyway, my parents were never like very anti-vaccination. Like I actually had never had the chicken pox. I have something naturally that has occurred, but my parents, as soon as the chicken pox vaccine came out, my mom went and had, got it for me. It's like, hey, you're going to go get this. I don't care how old you are. You're going to do this. Yeah. But when I became an adult and started to walk away from religion, I started jumping into the holistic sciences, right? And it's funny because it's a rabbit trail, man. All these people believe all these different things and they sound very good.
No, they sound great, and they use case studies, okay? Which, for the average person, a case study sounds sensible. It's like, oh, this person got help, so it'll help me too. But they don't understand is a case study is like the weakest form of evidence you could possibly have.
Yeah, and I didn't know that either. And I don't think a lot of people know that.
They don't. So, yeah, there's definitely a hierarchy to evidence, and eventually I write about that too. I'm assuming if you were to Google like hierarchy of scientific evidence, you would be able to find it immediately, but I'll definitely write about it at some point. But the case study is very, very weak, and it had its moment in history because that's all we had. We didn't have the scientific method or the scientific process at one point in time, and all we had was this cause and effect looking for this. So we had the case study, like, oh, I tried X, Y, and Z on this person and they got better. Then I did it to this person over here, and then this person got better. But our studies have evolved so much since then. And we are able to create studies which are just far more robust than the case study. Mm-hmm. And your average person doesn't realize that.
No, and I think you're right because I've had conversations with anti-vaxxers. I mean, recently we've had a big outbreak in Washington, right?
Yeah, the measles outbreak, yeah.
All it does is reinvigorate the anti-vax movement because they think that they can somehow justify things, and because we are now willing to yell at them and tell them, hey, hold on a second, if you had done all these things, they think because our silence all of a sudden is complicity. And so, for example, I haven't complained about vaccines or vaccinating children in probably 8-9 months because it wasn't a thing, right? Because in my circle, in my life, the majority of the people I know or talk to vaccinate their children, and those that don't engage Chris because, for Christ's sake, that Tanner kid, we're going to have a long conversation.
Yeah.
But this brings out the woodwork of all these people. Like I have a friend and she's a doula, right? And
I don't know what that is.
So basically she helps people have home births, right? She's not a certified medical technician, but she is certified in helping you have a home birth, right? And I don't have a problem with that, but along with that comes crystals, it comes anti-GMOs, 100% organic, and anti-vaccination.
Yeah. And so here's the issue is that you have something that sounds good, right? Okay. And then they inject all of this nonsense into it. So that way there's layers upon layers, and it sounds really good, but then you can't, and then the average person doesn't have the critical thinking skill set to be able to filter out the nonsense and say, okay, well, this is good and this is nonsense.
Yeah. And that's actually a lot of what drew me to your story specifically, right? Is you sent me an email, I started looking through your site and I was like, holy crap. So you grew up in a different religion. You grew up in the anti-vax or the holistic medicine religion, whereas I grew up in a conservative religion, right? You know, but it's kind of funny because the similarities in the nonsense that they spew. And for the listeners of the show, a lot of my journey out of religion and my journey out of some of these conservative or these weird sciences, these fringe sciences, kind of came when I went back to college, to start earning a degree. And when I started going back and looking at these different things, I had people challenge me, in these different classes that I was in. And, that was part of the requirement of the grade, right? Engage your students if you did online classes, right? So I didn't engage these other students to get a grade, but people would continue to go for hours and hours on end, even after they hit their comment limit or whatever,
Yeah.
So it helped me look out of that.
Hopefully respectful discourses, right? Like you couldn't engage, nobody engaged in name calling, or maybe they did and then walked away, but.
Nope. No, that was 100% against every rule. And if you did, you lost the grade for that week.
See, that's awesome. Yeah, that's a really great course where people are forced to engage in debates or discourses of that nature.
Yep. And that was the thing is, looking through your stuff and talking with you now is saying, hey, look, we have somebody, you're going to get your PhD degree in physics, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Which is, I got to ask the question of how you are moving into critical thinking versus physics. We have somebody, how much we could talk about physics on the show, right? And that's one of our favorite science topics to actually talk about.
If you want to talk about physics at some point, I'm more than happy to do it. My particular area of expertise, what I'm doing my research in, is in high energy theory. So I use a branch of physics known as quantum field theory, which is the intersection of quantum mechanics with special relativity. And from there, so essentially what I tell people is that I study really small things moving close to the speed of light and fundamental particle interactions. Yeah.
Like
not
dark
matter? No, not dark matter. I haven't gotten into dark matter candidates as of right now. And to be perfectly honest with you, because not a whole lot has come out of the LHC, it's a little bit of a dark period for high energy physics at the moment, because all we did was kind of put the cherry on top with the Higgs boson discovery, which is a really important discovery for the Standard Model. However, we were really hoping to see some new physics, because we know that our views of the universe are not complete. So we needed the LHC to lead us in the right direction, or to poke holes in our existing theories, so that way we can build upon that. But to date, it hasn't, which is slightly disappointing. And one of the primary things that we were looking for is supersymmetric particles. And this is something that's completely theorized. We've never observed them before, and we were really hoping to see them at the LHC, and we did not. And one of the reasons they were so important is because there's certain members of the supersymmetric particles that are dark matter candidates, because as your viewers are probably familiar, we still don't know what dark matter is. It's completely hypothetical at this point. So we're just trying to find evidence for these theories that we've put together.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, that's...
So how did that lead you to starting a platform to help educate people, A, on critical thinking, and B, on how you can utilize this tool in your personal life?
Well, my own journey, I thought was so profound for me, and I couldn't believe that these skills aren't taught in K through 12. I really, really couldn't believe it. And even with my training as a scientist, I wasn't required to take logic, which is a subset of philosophy. I wasn't required to take any philosophy courses, and I don't really understand why. I was well versed in the scientific method and experimental methods, because that is explicitly, that's something explicit in any scientific program. However, the intellectual tools from a philosophical standpoint, that was something that I had to go search for myself. And I think that it would be a tremendous value to society if more people were to learn these things. And beyond the critical thinking, one of the things that I tell people is, I'm going to teach you to think more like a scientist. Now, that doesn't mean that you're going to become a scientist, because that takes years of intense study. Okay. However, I can teach you some of the critical thinking tools that your average scientist implements in daily lab work, or as you're going through the scientific process. And I'm going to teach those to you. And we've talked briefly before the start of this about how the smartphone is a wonderful tool. The internet is a wonderful tool. And people walk around with access to all of this information. The entire breadth of human knowledge is at your fingertips. However, having access to Google doesn't make you an expert. And people really need to get better at refining their information filters. They need to be able to discern the good from the bad. They need to be able to pick out a credible individual versus a non-credible individual. So that's really what this is all about. And another thing, too, besides my own journey, 2016 was a huge wake-up call for me. The elections here in the United States with fake news. We've got a climate change denier as our current president, who tweets at least once a month about where he conflates weather and climate. Now, again, not to get political, but science should be apolitical, which means that everyone should listen to what scientists have to say, or what is coming from the community. You cannot make good decisions if those decisions are derived purely from ideology. They must be derived from evidence. If you want to reach the optimal results, they have to be derived from evidence. And this is part of what we do in the scientific community, is we get into debates, we get into discussions, we do experimentation, and then eventually, after years and years of experimentation, published research results across various aspects of science, they all point to the same conclusion. Then that's when a scientific consensus is formed. It's not a group of scientists saying, "Oh, our opinion is going to be this, and we should communicate that to the rest of the world." It's not that.
Yeah,
scientific
exactly.
Consensus,
yeah, and that's the big thing here, right? Is a lot of people don't understand that, right? And a lot of people and I've had to have this argument, with anti-vax. I guess maybe I'm being anti-vaxxer, heavily this episode, right? But
no, that's fine. That's fine. I mean, to some degree, there's certain anti-vaxxers out there that, like Andrew Wakefield, like that guy should be put in jail. However, you should also be some compassion for the people who are deluded, right?
Yes.
I was around when I was in the holistic community, Chris. I was around wonderful individuals, but they truly believed these things, that they were doing good for the world, that they weren't hurting anybody. So those are the type of people you need to have some compassion for.
Yeah. No, and you're right. And it's kind of funny, when I grew up and moved out, right, and had my own house, I had a friend, and his fiance was very anti-vax. She's very anti-GMO, very organic, right? And she's a vegetarian. And, I was extremely anti-vegetarian at the time, because it's like, why would I give up meat? Do you not understand? Well, once I got into, looking at the climate change science and understanding what the carbon footprint is, and, oh, by the way, all these factory farms are actually extremely harmful to
the CAFOs.
To society, then it's like, okay, hold on a second. I'm going to re-examine the vegetarian aspect, because and for everybody listening, I'm not vegetarian. I have reduced my meat intake, and we have reduced it in our household. Yes. But the idea behind, understanding and having the compassion, like I thought she was a genius, right? Her political views and mine lined up 100%. And then we had all of the, I had all this other holistic stuff that came along with it. So I just kind of thought, hey, you and I match here. Therefore, maybe you're right about these things, And the one thing that always stuck with me is, well, you're a vegetarian and I'm never going to give up meat. And now I kind of I agree to the vegetarian lifestyle to some extent. And now I want to embrace GMOs, and we need vaccines. And, what are you talking about here? There's no such thing as crystals. and I don't even know what they call the little perfume things. I can't remember what
essential oils.
There you go. Essential oils,
essential oils.
They don't.
They smell great. They smell great, but they don't cure anything.
Yeah. But you want to know what you want to know what one of the other things are, and I don't know if you've ever ran into this. Now with all the medical marijuana and all the legalization, right? Everybody's hawking these marijuana cures as like we're gonna cure cancer, and hey, rub this on your arm, it'll feel better. But it's like it's the same thing though, isn't it? I mean, I don't know. Have you ran into some of the similar things?
Yeah, so with marijuana, or cannabis as it's routinely called these days, there is a lot of nonsense. It's a bit of a wild west right now because it's brand new. And I mean, as far as a legalization standpoint goes, but the research does not say that it cures cancer. If you talk to a medical doctor, they will not tell you that cannabis cures cancer. It just does not do that. Also, if something is active in a petri dish, meaning like you see interesting results on a few cells in a petri dish, that does not automatically mean that applies then to the 100 trillion cell human body. The body is incredibly complex, and it takes years of dedicated experiment in order to arrive at a result that we know is that has efficacy beyond placebo, meaning that you have a real observed effect here, and then we can get it into mainstream. Now, that being said, cannabis is also something that has been demonized for a very long time, and it hasn't been allowed to be studied because it was a type of drug, an illicit substance. Now it's finally gaining more traction. It absolutely should be allowed to be studied, along with some of the psychoactive, like mushrooms and fungus, various funguses out there. Such as psilocybin, those are showing promising results. And again, those haven't been allowed to be. You couldn't study those for a long time because it was an illicit substance. Again, people just need to refrain from being overzealous with any of the research that comes out. Listen to what's coming from the community. Listen to what your experts are telling you, and just tread carefully. Just tread carefully. Do your due diligence as best you can, and try not to make outlandish claims with anything that's brand new.
Yeah.
Generally, there's a cognitive bias known as the Dunning-Kruger effect, which basically means that people with low information on a topic think that they know everything, and that people with high information on a topic feel uncomfortable and think they know nothing because they realize how much that they don't know. Anyway, as you're learning something new, make sure that you're not falling into this trap where you're low information, but you don't realize you're low information, and then you go and tell everybody about it. And I'm guilty of that. Everyone is. I mean, these cognitive biases, they don't go away. They can be minimized, but we're all guilty of it.
Oh, yeah. Which kind of brings me, to one of the, I don't want to call it your main thesis, right? Because I know you're a PhD candidate. This is probably not the thesis that you're using to get your doctoral degree, right? But
I am not, no. Yeah.
One of the main things on your website is the laws of critical thinking. And it kind of brings me back about 2 years ago, our show did an interview with Anthony from Street Epistemology. Now, this is a little bit of a different, avenue, but essentially it was trying to take critical thinking and apply it to your discussions with those who believe religious ideologies, especially conservative ones. And that's kind of like the founding foot for me. Like when I came out as an atheist, it was all of the, well, your Bible makes zero sense. How do you not see this? You have a cognitive bias. You take the step one. But then how do you go farther in actually decompressing some of the other things and some of the other feelings and the other, how society impresses it on you, how your family needs it? How does all those things come into play here? And I don't mean to offend if you're religious or anything, but
no, you're fine.
One of the things, when you present it and says, hey, I've got these, we'll call them the 7 commandments of critical thinking, right? You have these guidelines that you can use to talk through and look at each different subject. And I think some of the problem with society, and this is just my speculation here, though, is that everybody wants that easy hit, right? When you look at a blog, when you look at a Facebook post, you can actually see how long of a time limit it tells you it's going to take you to read this. Yes, and I think people go, well, that's 7 minutes. Ooh, that's 4 minutes of my time. I can consume that in a microburst because I work in manufacturing, right? Lean manufacturing teaches how do you reduce the amount of time between tasks and how can you reduce repetitive tasks to make them, extremely productive. Well, if I'm reading something, if I can read it in 4 minutes versus 25, look how much of my life I just got back. But how does that apply to your laws?
How much of that did you actually absorb, though? So exactly. I think with some of this, though, with the optimization, we're missing out on something. Making things easier, faster, applies to, I think, many areas. However, certain areas such as like education, things of that nature, I think that there's a basement. Like you can only learn so quickly, and everyone is going to be different. So yeah, I just think that there has to be some sort of lower limit, and that society needs to kind of restructure how it thinks in that aspect. Where are we going to cut corners? Where is it acceptable and where is it not acceptable?
Yeah.
But anyway, going back to your question. So with the 7 laws of critical thinking, now these, and there are actually 8 laws. If you are trying to change somebody's mind, this isn't necessarily the laws that are going to help you change their mind, because that's more of a like persuasion, psychological type twist. But with these 8 laws, it will help you to foster your own critical thinking skills. And then you can communicate them, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the way that you communicate them is going to be effective and that you're going to change somebody else's mind. At some point, I'll probably write more on or get into how to properly persuade people. But one of the things right off the top is whenever you engage in a discourse with somebody and you immediately know that you're at odds, you can feel it, right? Because your heart rate jumps, you go into flight or flight mode, right? Mm-hmm. Have you ever been there? When you engage, you can feel your heart rate, you get flushed, you get tingling. Yeah.
There's a reason we do this, the podcast, so that instead of me getting angry in my house, yelling at people on the internet, I can vent on here and invite people on the show and feel better about it.
And then feel better about it. It's taken me a long time to work through that. And it still happens to me. It feels like you get punched in the gut. It's like an explosion of adrenaline. It's definitely the HPA axis, the hypothalamus, pituitary, and the adrenals. You go into defense mode, right? But you need to work through that, and you need to stay focused on calming the emotions down and activating that higher mind. You want to stay away from those animalistic type responses, and you want to engage the neocortex, or your higher mind, because that's essentially where you are and where all of your higher order thinking comes from, or metacognition. So first things first is work through that, set it aside. If you need to take a few deep breaths, go ahead and do that, and then have a discussion keep it as calm as possible, and then listen to their point of view, and then try to articulate. And then whatever you do, don't ever make them close up. Don't attack them personally, because if you do, they close up like this, and then that could be it for you. But just stay calm, collected, listen, do a lot of listening to what they have to say, and then make suggestions. Don't tell them how to live their life, make suggestions. And then if it really gets to a point where you just can't reach any sort of amicable conclusion, you can always say, well, I agree to disagree, and I think we should move on. So
I have a hard time doing that. That's not in my vocabulary. I will admit that's not in my vocabulary, and it's not because, well, some of it is because of my personality, right? You know, like I don't know, you know, in business they have different personality tests you take, right? So that you understand how you can fit your organization. So they have, you know, a DISC test, you know, which I'm now talking business jargon that a lot of people probably just gloss over here. But I'm a D personality. I'm a very dominant, very aggressive. I'm not one that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the facts. We're going to get right into the details. We're going to make a decision. We take the empathy, the compassion side out of the decision and save that till afterwards, right? So
but that's in a business setting, right?
It is, yes. So in my personal life, though, deconstructing myself and allowing for that to happen is a lot harder, right? You know, it's not that I don't have the empathy for the others. It's not that I don't have empathy for where people are at, because I do genuinely, but I have a hard time saying I'm okay to disagree, agree to disagree, depending on what it is. I guess it depends on what it is. But you know, like if somebody's like, should we restrict the free speech of Nazi? I'm over here saying, hell yes. You know, I'm not going to back down from that. You know, whereas if somebody's like, you know, should we vaccinate our kids? I'm going to raise my hand 90% of the way, you know, but if somebody's like, well, I want to believe God exists, I'm now at the point where it's like, okay, I can agree to disagree with you. As long as we can agree on what moves society forward, you can have your illusionary belief, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah. No, I can certainly appreciate that. And you definitely have to kind of gauge the situation and what you're comfortable with doing. The reason why I said I threw out the agree to disagree is because if you're not able to reach some sort of conclusion with somebody else, eventually emotions will take over. It'll begin to escalate, and you'll probably end up yelling at each other, or it could even escalate to a physical interaction, which is why when you have a breakdown of actual verbal communication between two countries, then it escalates to war. Not necessarily war, but armed conflict. Because, again, once this verbal communication is kaput, it breaks down, then that's when you have to be concerned about physical altercations.
Yeah. One of your laws that you have in here is embrace holistic thinking. And I'll be honest, that one, I have a deep question about, A, based on your background, and B, based on what I understand as a holistic idea. So explain that law.
Really important. It's really important that I explain that, because it doesn't necessarily mean embrace the holistic medical community. It's just a style of thinking, which is take a big picture view. So, for example, we were talking about politics briefly. So in the US, we have the right and then we have the left, or the Democrats and then the Republicans. So if you were to embrace holistic thinking while approaching politics, what you would do is look at the arguments from both sides. And you want to avoid the extremes, because the extremes generally in politics are pretty volatile, and you're not going to really get anything constructive by looking at the extremes, but by staying more towards the middle and looking at something from the right and then looking at something from the left, meshing the views together a little bit, then you'll be able to construct hopefully a better worldview of what's going on politically in the world and where people are, where people find themselves, etc. And then another thing too with holistic thinking is trying to figure out how everything fits in or is put together. So, for example, the science has predominantly reductionist, meaning that we kind of zoom in and then we zoom in and we zoom in and we try to look for methods or mechanisms of action, see how things are related, cause and effect, things of that nature. However, as you begin to zoom out, you observe fundamental changes generally, and we see this in physics. So, for example, I was talking to you earlier about my field of study, dealing with really, really small things moving really, really fast. Within physics, we have quantum mechanics. So that's dealing with things on a quantum realm. So that has a particular type of physics that we use to describe what happens on that particular scale. But then as we begin to zoom out, we enter into a very, like a gray area where instead of having like 2 or 3 atoms, we now have collections of atoms, like 1,000 or 1,500 atoms. And the physics starts to get a bit funky. Like we can no longer use quantum mechanics to properly model what's going on. So within this regime, this mesoscopic realm, we use a branch of physics known as statistical mechanics. And then as you get bigger, as you begin to zoom out even further, you are dealing with large collections of atoms, such as human beings or balls rolling down ramps or planes flying through the sky. We now are in the macroscopic realm, and we deal with classical mechanics or even Einstein's theory of relativity. So within society, you see things of this nature where you have a fundamental shift when you have, let's say, a small group of individuals versus a large group of individuals. So by holistic thinking, I'm asking people to zoom out and start to look at the bigger picture. Don't think of your immediate family as like the only human beings that exist, right? You exist within nested bubbles or family units. For example, you have your nuclear family, then you exist within a small community, or you have your extended family, then you have your community that you exist in, which exists in a larger city, which exists in a country or a state, or then you have a state, then a country, etc. So you can see where I'm going with this, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that's what I mean by embrace holistic thinking. It's just that the world is incredibly complex, and do not try to reduce it to something that's binary, that's black and white.
No, yeah. And I actually agree with you. As much as our show talks about politics, and that's obvious, politics and science are our 2 main focuses on the show. But there's a podcast that I've been listening to for a while now, called Dan Carlin Common Sense, and he doesn't do his political side of his show anymore. And he was always an independent. He was always saying, "Hey, do you understand what the fringe logic looks like? Do you understand what this corporate logic looks like? Do you understand that?" Yeah. And he was always, I'm the independent. I'm for the outside candidate. I want to bring some of this into faction here. And then here comes Trump, right? And now he doesn't know what to say. And he's literally said, "Hey, look, we can argue all day long about the day-to-day. We can argue all day long about the week-to-week. But if we don't understand how to fix the long-term picture, we're not going to get anywhere." And he says, I have to stop doing my political podcast because I'm now in an unknown realm. Politics have moved past this somewhat easily predictive discussion between reasonable factions. And I don't personally, again, want to correlate all Democrats and Republicans as reasonable factions, but that was our logical consistent that our society embraced.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, for a long time, politics seemed to be very reasonable. And then in the past 20 years, it's just
gone off the charts.
It's gone off the rails. Yeah. It's completely unhinged.
Yes. It's almost like politics has adapted to the intellectual and technological climate that we're moving so fast. And what happens in evolution, right? Evolution doesn't happen in the span of 10, 20, 40 years, right? Even your spotted specklefish, right? I mean, if you look at the longevity and relate that to human years, they don't evolve that fast, right? Speckled fish don't evolve to you could see the change in your lifetime, but they don't evolve comparatively to the rest of society. And the problem is our technology is creating an advancement that is allowing us to, evolve at a different rate than we ever had before. But I don't know if we're taking our cognitive along with it at the same rate. So
no, we're not. Yeah, we're definitely being left behind. At least the majority of us are.
Yeah. And so when we talk about holistic thinking, that's a great analysis, right? Hey, stop looking at the day-to-day. Let's look at the future. And it's kind of funny because a lot of people, there's a lot of people that don't like the progressive agenda. There's a lot of people that are like, hey, we shouldn't punch Nazis. We should respect everybody's free speech. Do you understand what this Me Too movement is doing? But what they don't understand is that this has been happening for thousands of years, right? And now it's coming to this head. And instead of saying, I'm upset because it makes me feel uncomfortable, I'm upset because it's challenging my day-to-day. Let's look 100 years in the future. Let's look 1,000 years in the future. Where do we want to be? And if all we want to do is worry about how I feel and how I'm upset because my privilege is challenged, then shame on me. How do I holistically think, right, to the point where I could say, hey, what's equality as close as we can get it to all, right? Yep. It's obviously not me dominating the field so I can make a buck. It shouldn't be that.
Yeah, that's another thing too in this country. When you sit talking about dominating the field to make a butt, is we fundamentally need to redefine capitalism, what it means to be a capitalistic society, because currently the way that we're embracing capitalism to the extreme that it's gone to, it's clearly causing harm, in my opinion. It's definitely causing harm. Too. Yeah, so we need to fundamentally, and I'm not anti-capitalist. Okay, I've started and run a number of businesses myself, which is fundamentally what it means to live in a capitalistic society. However, when you just look at all the evidence, there is something going wrong, and we need to tone it down a bit. And I don't know if that means injecting into society some more socialistic type ideals to tone the capitalism down, or something else. But yeah, we need to address the problem and not pretend that it's not there.
Yeah,
so I think definitely.
I think one of the highlights of your 7 laws, or the 7 laws, I'm not going to associate. I'm going to say the 8 laws. Sorry, you have a number 7 on there. I can't get past that number.
You can't get the note 7. Yeah, well, it was originally 7, and then I had to add one more, which is now the 6th law of critical thinking, which is know how to identify a credible source. I couldn't believe that I didn't have that in there to begin with, so I had to add that.
Yeah,
I may add another. I don't know, but
it's called evolution, right? As you evolve, as you understand more, you're able to adjust and move your position forward.
And that's actually that's funny because that's the 4th law of critical thinking, which is be intellectually humble. So that is like you constantly subject one's own belief systems to reevaluation because you can't possibly know everything. Nobody will ever know everything. I think the last person on the books who actually did know everything about the world died in the mid 1800s or something like that. So it's impossible for you to know everything. We're always learning new things at a very rapid rate. So just be intellectually humble.
Yeah. Are you sure? My parents told me there was a guy, his name, I believe his name was Jesus. He knew everything. No, and I'll be honest with you. I'm sorry. I genuinely, that's actually my favorite part of that, because there's two reasons why. Reason A is because that's what helped me understand that I'm not the most intelligent person. Though lots of people like to think, they are. I am finally able to actually admit, hey, I'm obviously not the most intelligent person. I'm not always right. How can I be better? And the other reason, the talking about being humble, and that's something that a lot of us don't have. And I'll admit that that's not a character strength of Tanner. It's something I have to work very hard at, especially in business. One of the ideas, if you want to relate, as I'm coaching people in business, the discussion is how do you get across the best message? It's not to walk in there and say, I know how to do this. I've already done this 100 times. Let's do it my way. It's engaging people to bring them to the same conclusion you have through admitting that, hey, you had a journey and this is how I got here. Let's help you through that journey. It's putting yourself back however many years to walk with them in their shoes. And I think that, to me, out of everything that you have on that list, to me, that's my favorite one, for the pure fact of it's understanding where you came from, accepting it, and saying, how can we help change the future?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I categorically agree. So,
well, there we go.
Yeah, there we go. I don't have no rebuttal from me. And I know that a large large number of your listeners of this podcast are actually atheists. And I should say that I'm not technically an atheist. I'm not religious either. I was born and raised Catholic, and I moved away from that a very long time ago after my father insisted that I get confirmed. And after I was confirmed, he said that I could do whatever I wanted if I didn't want to go to church or whatever. I didn't have to practice religion anymore. And that was the last time that I went to church of my own free will, was when I got confirmed.
Well, there you go.
But I tend to embrace agnosticism these days, which basically means I don't know, because we have no evidence for either the existence or the non-existence of any of that, because none of us really truly knows what happens after we die. I mean, the best guess based off the best science available is that it's it. That you just turn the computer off, essentially, very similar to how when you go to sleep, you don't even realize that that you're sleeping, right? There's nothing. I mean, sometimes you have dream states and whatnot, but when you get a good solid sleep, it's your head hits the pillow and then you're waking up the next morning and you don't have any recollection of what happened in between.
Exactly. And so there's, I'll correct. So there's a little bit, I understand your point of view, and it's funny if the listeners want to go back and listen. We just did an interview with the podcast Everybody's Agnostic, ironically enough. And for anybody listening, if you missed that show, go back and check that show. I'll throw the link in the description. But technically speaking, you're right. I'm actually an agnostic atheist. I do not know, but my personal beliefs is that there is zero gods, that it can exist. But I agree with you, in the agnostic terms. And when I first came out, that was like a large discussion, right? A lot of people are like, stop identifying as agnostic. Make sure you put that atheist in there, help destigmatize atheism. And the farther away I got, the farther I see this as the agnostic is the larger discussion here, not the atheist, because in the long run, I don't care what your beliefs are. I only care what the science shows, and I only care how you utilize your knowledge to either advance or dismiss society. And for me, the turn-off point about saying, oh, I'm just an atheist, is the pure fact that, for me, it goes back to, what does atheist stand for? Well, just, you believe in zero gods. It's like you give zero craps. Yeah. Good for you. I'm glad. But at some point, how do we articulate I don't know does not equal there has to be something out there. It equals I don't know, and I have better things to talk about in the long run of things than that. Yeah.
And I think that's why I like agnostic versus atheism, because the I don't know allows room for discussion. We can discuss these things, look at the best science that's coming out, saying on consciousness, things of that nature. It doesn't close the door.
Yep, and I agree with you. So as we wrap the show, or as we wrap this segment up, what is tell me a couple things, right? We want you to plug your site, Intelligent Speculation, right? We want you to plug your platform. The second thing is what is the biggest takeaway that you want everybody to understand? What if there's one thing, or we'll say two things. What are the two things you want the audience to take away from what your mission and goal set is here for the future?
Yeah, well, the fundamental mission of why I do this is I just want to make society a little bit better. I've been driven since a young kid to try to go out and make a positive impact on the world. Which is why I decided a long time ago that in order to do that, I needed to become an advanced problem solver, so that way I could identify problems and come up with proper solutions for them. So the underlying impetus behind why I do all of this is because I believe that if we are able to disseminate this information throughout society, we're going to raise society up a little bit in the right direction. And also, I want people to know is that by learning this particular critical thinking skill set, and it's always evolving, again, be intellectually humble, admit that, whatever you read here and you think that you're done, you're not really done. You essentially should embrace lifelong learning. But by developing a more critical mind, you are going to lead yourself or allow yourself to make better decisions than you did previously, because you have this skill set now. And when you make better decisions, that's going to lead to better outcomes. So one of the ways that I tell people that this will kind of sell that to them is that do you want to have better outcomes in life? this will help you get there. And it will help you to discern fact from fiction. It will help you pick out credible sources from non-credible sources. If you have an appreciation for science, it will definitely help you to appreciate science more. But overall, life improvement for sure. And it'll probably have spillover effects into all aspects of your life, not just one particular aspect. Let's say if you're doing this for business. I'm a part of an entrepreneurial network, and a lot of them are like, well, how can this help me with business? Which essentially boils down to, how can this help me make more money? If you're in business, you know that you need to make optimal decisions, and optimal decisions aren't arrived at fast. They're not careless. They're not arrived at emotionally. And even if you go through that entire process, but don't possess the skill set, you still won't arrive at the best decision. And again, when I say best, I mean, I'm talking about optimization, right? There is no true best decision. That's some sort of ridiculous extreme that's unattainable. So I'm talking about optimization or life optimization in general.
Awesome.
So
tell everybody again real quick, where can they find you and what's the best way to engage with your platform?
All right. So again, the website is www.intellegentspeculation.com. And then I also have, I'm on basically all of social media. So I've got, I shouldn't say all of social media. That's an extreme.
You're on the major platform. So there we go.
I'm on the major. Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Thank you for the assist there. So I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. I'm working on making some more video content as of right now. That's going to accompany each one of the postings, the blog postings. And then I also have a podcast available. So it's just Intelligent Speculation Podcast. The podcast is just the audio that's removed from the videos that I'm doing accompanying each. So that way you have a variety of platforms that you can choose from to consume your information.
Awesome.
But yeah, if you want to engage with me directly, I'm very active on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram almost every day, chatting with people.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jonathan Maloney from IntelligentSpeculation.com or Intelligent Speculation Podcast, whichever floats your boat. Or we call it Intelligent Speculation YouTube Show. Are we allowed to call it that too? I mean, we just give all these little names to it.
Whatever you want to do. Yeah, whatever helps people to come check me out and be intrigued by what I have to offer and say, yes, you know what? I want to become a critical thinker.
There you go.
I want to develop this skill set. Okay.
There you go. Awesome. And maybe someday with your PhD candidacy, when you get your doctorate, you'll become a teacher and you'll be able to help offer online classes for others as well. So
yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Thank you so much, Jonathan, for joining us tonight. We'll be right back with more Cellar Door Skeptics.
Thank you.
Like what you're hearing? Check out more Cellar Door Skeptics every week right here on Spreaker and iTunes. Make sure you come back and check out new episodes with your hosts, Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna. And always, remember, prepare for the revolution.
Now, back to the show.
Well, if that last segment didn't energize you, I don't know what will. As we return from our interview segment, I really actually enjoyed this interview. Getting to talk with somebody about critical thinking. We did not get through all of his critical thinking laws, and that's my fault. I like to talk too much. Happened on the last interview too, but we will have him back on to have further conversation and commentary over the course of the next 2 or 3 months. So if you enjoyed him, send us an email, tweet at us, say, hey, we like him, subscribe to his platform, let him know your own thoughts. And the nice thing is all of it's free. So it's not like you have to pay for his platform at all right now. Everything's free, which is unlike the wall that Trump wants to build.
Or many of the other platforms. It just exists on the internet where we're slowly moving our way away from ad-supported platforms to pay-supported platforms. Because, listen, the streaming thing through Netflix kind of sold me so that I can get away from commercials. I really think I might be okay with microtransactions on the internet to get away from ad-supported mongoloids. So we'll see what happens in the near future there. But we'll do it. We could possibly do a segment on whether or not Chris would pay to use Facebook and some of the other social media platforms if it was ad-free and manipulation-free.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we've talked a little bit about it before. But yeah, that would be a good segment. Maybe we'll schedule that in the next couple of weeks. And
it'll be fun.
Yeah, I have another really quick story before we get into our charity of the week.
Okay.
So I came back from the store, and just this whole critical thinking, segment brought me back to this. I came back from the store, grocery store, and I came in and I bought Pringles. And my kids in this house love Pringles. Like, if we open a thing of Pringles, it's gone within a day. Like, it's gone. Nobody can regulate nothing in this whole house, right? And not even me, in fairness. So my daughter comes down, she goes, "Oh, you got Pringles? Can I have some?" I'm like, "Well, honey, they say..."
I love you, but I don't love you that much.
No. They say, actually, well, in fairness, I didn't buy her own thing. I bought...
Oh, you bought her one of those little short ones?
No. I bought one for my son and I to share, because it was Saturday, called extra spicy, right? It's like this extra chili spice. And nobody likes spicy things but my son, so I bought it for him and I just, to try.
Cool.
And we've had it before. So she goes, "Well, that's okay, Dad." And I was like, "You want to try one?" "Yep, it's a Pringle."
Oh, man.
"Oh, okay, honey. Here you go. Here's one chip." Here she is. She bites it. "Oh, this ain't spicy, Dad." "Oh, okay, honey."
30 seconds later.
Yeah, about 30 seconds later, she takes 2 or 3 more bites. She goes, "Okay, it's spicy." Goes over, gets a glass of water. She goes, drinks like half the glass of water, comes back and goes, "You know what?
I kind of like it."
Yeah. She goes, "It tastes really good. I don't notice the spiciness till afterwards, Dad." She goes, "So just make sure when you put these in my lunch that you include a bottle of water with it."
Oh.
I was like, what? Like, of all the things my child would like and latch onto, that was the weirdest thing for me.
Oh man, I can't wait for moments like that when my kid's a little bit older and I can do some of that stuff. Like I had we got a gift card, and so I had Buffalo Wild Wings. I never had their mango habanero before, and it's the hottest mango habanero wings I've ever had. They were really hot. It was awesome. Like, I love mango habanero. There's a bunch of pickles and stuff you can get, but like mango habanero is so cool. And it's like, my daughter was like, "Can I have some?" No, honey, no, you can't. Like, if it's hot to the point where I'm sweating and my eyes are watering and my nose is running, like, that's hot, because I really do love hot chili. I add all kinds of pepper and spices to my foods after the fact, because I can't cook with it because it'll cook my family out. But like, I do really like spicy capsaicin loaded stuff. And my daughter's like, "Can I try it?" And so I let her head up a couple of little things, sriracha sauce and some stuff like that. But I hope that her palate evolves to the point where she'll be able to, be the spicy one, because my wife doesn't like the spicy either. So like, I don't know. I like challenging myself a little bit. Like, one of my favorite shows on YouTube is Hot Ones. I love that show where they eat the not like hot wings. They're like nuclear hot wings. I don't know. I love hot stuff, and so like I want to try some of that crazy hot stuff, but we'll slowly work our way into it.
And I think you can. And they actually say if you introduce them slowly, bits by bits, people's palates will change. And in fairness, my son's palate has almost surpassed mine to some extent. Like, have you ever had Tapatio hot sauce?
Oh, yeah.
It is the cheapest, most spicy hot sauce I've ever had in my whole life. Like, I'm dead serious. Like, a bottle is like $1.25, will last me a year minimum. Like, because it's just me and my son, but I can add like a couple of drops to my taco and feel it. I can add like 4 drops to my taco and really feel it. My son he just puts that shit on there, and he's like,
it's like Frank's dude. Red Hot. He's just splashing it all over.
I'm like, dude, that's hot. But then other times, for example, I made stuffed jalapeno poppers, not fried, just baked, without breading. I just wrap them in bacon instead, which is not healthy either, but they were really good. And he won't eat those. He's like, I don't like the spice to them. It's like, you are eating tapatio sauce, but you're not going to eat the jalapenos.
Some people like a different kind of spice. Habanero has a different flavor than jalapeno, and some of the red chilies and some of the ghost chilies and stuff like that. Like, ghost chili to me tastes like metal. It's very metallic flavored. Yeah, and like habanero, I love habanero with a tiny hinge of sweetness. So like, you throw some mango in with the habanero, it's just an awesome thing. But like, habanero, I have habanero extract, habanero sauce, and like, I'll throw that in all kinds of stuff. And it really is a good hot sauce. I have not tried anything like Reaper level, but I did go to an engineer's office, and he had a salsa from Carolina that had pepper extract in it. And I will say this on the record: anyone who buys anything with pepper extract in it is an idiot. Because pepper extract is essentially pure capsaicin, just reduced and added to something. Like, if you're going to have a really good hot sauce, like something that tastes good, with a good pepper in it, but like, just anybody can add pepper extract. You could have a bowl of tomato sauce and put enough pepper extract into it to make it so unbelievably hot, it's just ridiculous. And that's what this guy had. He had some salsa that had some pepper extract in it. It was just tomatoes and, whatever. And then it was so unbelievably hot. He was like, dude, try some of this. And so I had a little bit, and I had an empty stomach. It's like 11:30. I'm about to eat lunch. I haven't had any food, drink, or anything in like an hour. And I almost crashed the car on the way back to my shop. I was in so much fucking pain. It was insane. But like, that's the worst I've ever been. Like, as far as like spicy is concerned, like, I love hot stuff. So hopefully my kid will be as cool as your kid. I don't know. I don't know. It's a push.
You never know. And that's kind of funny because this lady, her son lives down in Georgia, and she brought this thing back called like G13 or something like that. It's this little green.
Is his name Johnny? Is his name Johnny?
No, his name's not.
Damn it!
No, it's definitely not Johnny.
Well, Johnny went down, the devil in Georgia and all that stuff. So,
nope.
That was a hope.
Nope, it's Lance or something weird like that. But she brought this stuff back, and she's like, "This is the hottest thing ever." And there's a couple of us in the office that kind of like some of that hotter stuff.
So you tried it?
So I did. I put it on a little chip, and I won't lie and say that it wasn't spicy, because it was. The little bit I had was pretty bloody spicy, but it really wasn't like world-ending. And so then later on in the week, I went to the farmer's market in Holland, and they had Carolina Reaper peppers. And so I bought some of them, and I brought them in the office, and I was like, here, take one of these and send this to your son. And she's like, he's had this before. I was like, no. The guy I got this from actually, like, he's
made you
farmer,
sign paper.
But yeah, he clones the two together somehow. Like, he actually, like, it's probably not cloning, but he's whatever he does to get the two seeds together. So like, he's trying to make his own pepper because he's crazy like that. He's a crazy old farmer who's not married and lives with his mom still. So he makes these weird peppers sometimes, and he gives them to me every couple of years. He'll have something new, and so I brought this in there. So this is a weird habanero Carolina Reaper hybrid. And she's like, no. And I'm like, just send it to him. She's like, nope, not going to do it. So there's this kid that comes to the office. This dude couldn't have been more than 22 years old. And he goes, I like hot stuff. And I was like, no, you don't. And he's like, yeah, I do. He's like, I'll eat that. I was like, you're going to eat that with nothing? No. He's like, oh, yeah. He took it. He ate it. And I'll be honest, it was amazing. I have a video of this. He literally, he turned a little bit red, but like, in fairness to him, like, he ate that, no problem. The second one he ate, though, was the thing that did him in. He was in the bathroom for 2 hours.
Well, okay. Well, first off, right out of the gate, like you said, the guy was cloning and doing some stuff. When you're doing something that is, like, when you're doing a hybrid, like, you'll have variations in Scoville units and capsaicin concentration that could be 15, 20, 30%. Like, you could have, like, I don't know, have you ever had a jalapeno where you're like, it's not spicy at all, and then you'll have one and you're like, this is a jalapeno, why am I cooking so bad? Like, the capsaicin level can vary pretty heavily because it's such a wide and generic plant. Like, when they do the really, really super spicy peppers, like, they clone them so that they're almost identical every single time, because you're really trying to hit that high number all the time. But if you do hybrids and stuff, you could have one pepper that's 30 or 40% as strong as the next one. And so like that second one could have been like a monster. It could have been a freak.
You're right. It could have been. I have no idea. All I know is that he ate it, and then he ate that second one, and then he wanted a third one, man. And he was going to eat. I mean, he's eating on no water. I'm just like straight, just like, I mean, we're not talking.
Have you
like
seen those contests where people do that?
Oh yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy.
That's
I would
insane.
never do that. Never in my life would I do that.
No,
never.
I like hot stuff, but that's freaky. That's just wrong. Like you can get an ulcer from that crap. Like that's insane. I don't know. I'm gonna be growing habaneros. I'm gonna try to grow ghost peppers and 5-gallon buckets this year. I'm so excited about the spring this year. It's gonna be amazing. I'm a nerd gardener now. I love it. It's gonna be great. I have a tiny little garden. It's gonna be amazing. I can't wait for the snow to melt the heck out of my life so that I can get a little garden going with my daughter, because she kind of helped pull garden weeds out and everything last year. So hopefully she'll be interested in it again this year. It'll be so much fun.
That would be fun. That would be fun. You can come do my garden for me too. I'd like that.
No. I have a tiny little one. It's easy to deal with. I'm going to be putting all kinds of little like peppers and stuff, and I'm going to be mixing it. Apparently, if you do a full-on organic garden, if you use like seasonings and herbs and stuff, you can use those to like drive away. So like if you use like mustard and thyme and cilantro and stuff, it'll drive away certain kinds of pests. So I'm going to have all kinds of herbs growing in between all my plants. It's going to be pretty cool. I'm excited.
Well, if you have extra cilantro, send it my way. We eat it.
Dude, I eat so much cilantro. Yeah. I'll grow a bunch in there and I'll throw some your way.
All right. Well, for the charity of this week is a little different. We're doing kind of a hybrid again. It's not going to be a local charity. For Black History Month, there's a website called Charity Navigator, and they have a blog that essentially talks about a lot of the charities that have helped honor the different struggles that Black Americans have faced throughout the centuries, right? And obviously, back in the 1800s, there was none of them. So now it's kind of nice to see, nice to see that, especially because like this week is, Lincoln's birthday, Frederick Douglass's birthday, and so it's kind of nice to see different highlights that you would normally not see. So I really like this blog. I guess it's a blog, right? And it puts all these different charities, gives you the rating for them, and gives you links, and then breaks them up into different categories. So, for example, there's a history and culture category. They talk about the Museum of African American History. Huge. That's something.
Cool.
I hate saying huge, but that's something that we definitely should look into. They have the National Civil Rights Museum, which is a 501c3. And that one is extremely amazing. I absolutely love this specific museum, and I wish I had more funds, to actually travel and go visit all these different museums. But with this website, you can actually click on the different links, and they give you the ratings, and they give you the fiscal rating, accountability, traceability. It gives you the actual capital, the revenue that's brought in for it, different capital, who's donating to it, and different things like that. And then it kind of breaks it down into pie charts, which is even more amazing, right? Because what do I love more than anything? Pie charts, right? So
yeah, well, you're definitely in management, that's for certain, if you're loving that. Well, one of the things I really liked about what you've got on here is like it's a really great aggregator. It's bringing a lot of really good information together for someone who obviously, if you're at this website, you're looking for good charities, things that are reliable and safe, and have a good, I guess, financial history, so that potentially you're going to be donating to a group that's really going to use your money for growth and for helping the community, as opposed to what a lot of charities we've heard about in over the years, where they're basically paying their administrative staff, and not enough money is going to the people they're supposedly supposed to help. So this is really cool. I really think this is an awesome idea. And anybody that's interested, when you go to the link, anybody that's listening to this show, go to the link, send us a link, say, hey, this is your favorite one. This is the one that you think Cellar Door Skeptics should donate to this year. Because we obviously every year we put money into a charity, and if we get enough messages from someone, maybe we could send our money that way this year. So if you find one, if you think that's going to be the greatest one that you really think is a big deal, then send us a message, let us know, and we'll put that into the rotation, and maybe we'll make a final decision, and that could be the one that picked, because maybe we can go outside of our usual and go into a charity that we've never donated before that would be supporting the African American community. I think that would be a really cool thing for us to do. So let us know. What do you think?
Yeah. And the best part about this is it doesn't just have your, just the base level ones that you always hear about, right? Like the NAACP, that's a great legal defense fund. It's been used multiple times. They have that on there, but that's not the only one. They also have on here a smaller organization, called Headwaters Foundation for Social Justice. That one's total income for the whole year is like $6,000 to $7,000, right? So, wow. It's not looking just specifically at large dollar amount revenue, different things like that. It's actually, talking and bringing in other organizations that can help in smaller communities, and that's the best part about this whole contribution, right?
Yeah. Definitely. I don't know. This is an awesome charity for February. It's important to remind people as we get a little bit older, because I remember in school every year, February is Black History Month. I mean, I was reminded it was an important thing. As I've gotten older, went to college, I really didn't hear about it a whole lot in college, and I do not hear about it in the small business world that I'm in. Like, it's not something that I see in the news. It's not something that I hear a lot. So, bringing that to mind, making sure that people don't forget that this is a really important month for a really important group of people in this country that help build what we have and help build what we enjoy every day. And their ancestors were, they weren't treated so well for what they did. So these kinds of charities and stuff, helping these communities out, this is important stuff, and it's important because as an American to appreciate your history and what basically has gone on in our society, and trying to make amends for past wrongs, and to help essentially drive up everyone's equality. So the whole point, in the United States, that everyone has the chance and the right for the pursuit of happiness. These charities could, these aren't going to be the kind of charities like, here's a whole bunch of money, we're going to take care of everything for you. Like, these charities are going to be charities that are going to be helping people grow their quality of life, and helping people fix problems that they've been wronged by bad businesses or something. They need legal help. They need that starter fund so they can start that business, and those kinds of charities. So there's a lot of really great stuff that these people are doing that could help the African American community, and then once the communities have a little bit of help from you, then you can say, when your grandmother tells you that African Americans have had 200 years to assimilate, you said they are assimilated, and they're a really important part of our society. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that African Americans have had 200 years to assimilate, and they're still living in inner cities, and they're still problematic. Yeah, well, we can talk about the systemic problems and some of those things on there. So this kind of charity, this kind of group of charitable groups is really going to be doing something that's going to help. And I think that you've got an awesome pick for the charity of the month.
Charity of the week. Anyway.
Oh, the charity of the week. Yeah.
So as we wrap the show up, we have our quick save segment, right? I think we have our quick save segment. We're going to do a quick save segment, aren't we, Hannah?
Yeah, we missed it here and there, but we're gonna do one on this one. We both have something in the illustrious document here. Do you want to go first? Because yours is probably gonna be a little more serious than mine.
No, go ahead. Do yours first.
I every once in a while I have a Hitchens flashback, and I'll just search out Christopher Hitchens, or I'll see a link here and there, and this one was a link from Reddit that someone had had basically put on, and it was sharing a YouTube video of Christopher Hitchens, and it was an I guess an episode or one of the interviews that Hitchens did with Sean Hannity, and the direct link we've included in here is starting at the minute 70 or second 70 seconds into it, and where Hitchens essentially he's sitting and waiting for Sean Hannity to give him some kind of comment or point, and he basically just says that as an atheist, blah 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 blah, and he gives like I can't believe that you can get something from nothing, and that energy it doesn't exist before, and it's a variety of the Fox News mushy argument, and Hitchens his response is simply, you give me the awful impression, I hate to have to say it, of someone who hasn't read any of the arguments against their position ever. And it's one of the things that I miss when I look and hear and since David Silverman isn't on Fox News and anymore, and Bill O'Reilly is no longer on Fox News anymore. Like, I'm not seeing so he was the only person I ever brought on non-believers that I know. Sean Hannity, Hitchens was the only one that I ever saw on his show. It's like I'm not seeing a lot of that. Like Hitchens, the swashbuckling atheist, the guy that can come on there and he really could hold his own no matter who you tossed at him. Disagree with some of his politics and his philosophy or whatever, but like he was a really, really great orator. And every once in a while you see him come in and just bang on someone in a way that I miss in our community. And so like just every once in a while I get a reminder of how great he was when he was basically opposed in an argument. It just makes me feel nice. And so my quick save was the good old Chris Hitchens holding his own against people like Sean Hannity.
Yeah, and I agree with you. That's that's always nice to hear. I do miss the Hitch a little bit.
I know you have issues with his misogyny and some of the stuff that in support of the Iraq War and stuff. So like, there's all kinds of problems, but there is no what do they call them, idiot or idol or anything that would be in our community. Like nobody is above reproach.
Yeah, and the same thing would be is here we are, 10 years later after his death, right? And if I guess it's not quite 10 years. It's not quite 10 years. It's like 8 years, but whatever. We're 8 years after his death. If he was refusing to change and unapologetic, at that point, then it's like, yep, I can accept the few things that you have, but you're no longer a spokesperson. In death, it's a little different because he was never given the chance to change. And yes, we can all say he should have changed. He should have been better than what he was. I don't disagree, but, at some point, he has some good points, and he's not evil enough that we need to ignore. And that does come with a little bit of bias. There's a little bit of bias on yours on my side for this. But
after reading Mortality and seeing some of the changes that he had right before he passed away, like cancer will do that to you. It'll make you reflect a little bit and kind of grow up a little bit. And so like I think that some of the things that he said, like one of the things that he wrote for Vanity Fair, how women aren't funny. Like I do think that he changed a little bit on some of that stuff. It's one of those things that I went back through some of his old articles and stuff, and he had problems. He had a ton of problems, but this one here is just a quick Hitchens wit banger for people who enjoy someone going on someone else's show and just delivering a solid right hook right to the chin. So I enjoyed that. So that's my quick save of the week. It's just a hitch slap moment. You don't get them anymore, but that was a good one.
My quick save of the week came from Black Past. It's a website dedicated to African American history. This article showed up in my feed, and this is actually an older article, but about this lady named Marie Van Brittan Brown. And she was the inventor of a home security system. And I don't know, just going through some of the emotions of society and how it's currently thrown in, and having to accept that we ignore minority people all over the place. Reading this article, just is amazing because she grew up in, Queens, New York City. She went through all this turmoil and she helped create and invent cameras and monitors and two-way microphones to essentially, help alert police of people breaking and entering, right?
Yeah.
And this is amazing. Of all the things society can throw at you, this is something I never knew. And it kind of makes me reflect a little bit back and say, what am I doing to look at minorities in the movement? What am I doing to look at other things? And I feel a little ashamed because here we are, in Black History Month, and I go, this is a great article. But then I have to stop back and sit and go, well, it's my white privilege that allows me to not, not recognize this stuff every other day of the week. And I think it's a renewed commitment on my half. And I encourage people to call me out for it. It's a renewed commitment, though, on my behalf to start looking at other contributions that other people have made so that we don't have such a whitewashed America. Because if I can't change this generation and get rid of, fucking Trump at this point, and if we can't get rid of him because of all the disgusting gibberish that's going on, we can help train the next generation to see the value in a multicultural interface and see the value that minorities bring. I don't know. So I really like this.
This is insane. When you think of home security systems, you don't think of like an African American woman. You think of like giant corporations that are probably white owned or something. Like this, the stuff that she has on here, like doors with multiple peepholes and a two-way voice system so that she can communicate with the person outside. This is awesome. Like this woman was on top of her thing. A wireless system that communicates with monitors and stuff. Wow, dude, this link is amazing. Everyone, that you really should take a look at this. And this is like one of those things where you basically learn about an African American inventor, and you're like, that guy invented that? Holy crap! Yeah. And an African American made huge innovations, and they're never giving respect for what they've done. This woman deserves respect and a full-on Wikipedia page for making security in our country, in our homes. That's cool as hell.
Exactly. If you want to check out more of the websites in the link of the description, thank you all so much for joining us today. We'll be back next week with another amazing Cellar Door Skeptics. Thank you all, and have an amazing night.
You've been listening to a presentation of Cellar Door Skeptics. Check us out on Spreaker. CellarDoorSkeptics.com.
If you'd like to join the ranks of Patreons and sponsor the show, head over to patreon.com/Cellar Door Skeptics. For less than a 20-ounce soda or an energy drink each week, you can help sponsor us, the hosts, and our charity of choice. Patreon helps Cellar Door Skeptics create better content, become better activists, and it's going to help you stay healthier by drinking one less soda or one less energy drink each week. Click the link in the notes of the show to sponsor us today, because we bring the discussion with the sources.